40,000 construction workers can go back to work without employers seeking approval from the authorities.
Almost a return to normal, entry restrictions are lifted at 4 popular wet markets, but only on weekdays.
And calling his new political party Pejuang, Mahathir Mohamad says he wants Malays to have a party that fights for them.
A very good evening. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Harrian Tudiman.
And I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
102 new COVID-19 cases were confirmed today, taking Singapore's total to nearly 55,500. Now, today's count includes 5 community cases comprising a permanent resident and 4 work pass holders.
There were also 6 imported cases who had been placed on stay-home notices upon arriving in Singapore. Migrant workers in the dorms make up the majority of the other cases.
800 foreign workers are under new quarantine after one worker staying in the same dormitory tested positive for COVID-19. The Health Ministry did not name the dorm which had been cleared of the virus. As of last Friday, all 323,000 workers living in dorms have been tested for COVID-19.
Now, 40,000 construction workers are set to resume work after getting the go-ahead from the Building and Construction Authority.
The easing of rules means that workers can restart work without their employers needing BCA's approval first. Types of work that can be done without approval include renovations and the maintenance of lifts and escalators.
BCA is also temporarily suspending the 10 accommodation criteria so that more workers can return to work. The measures are designed to kickstart the construction sector, which has been hammered by the COVID-19 crisis.
We have Correspondent Yip Wai Yee to discuss these developments further. Wai Yee, you spoke to several construction companies. What are their responses to these easing of restrictions? Have these relaxations helped them?
Yeah, I think it definitely has helped them quite a bit. As you know, the construction sector in Singapore has been one of the hardest hit because of the cases in the dorms. So a lot of the projects have been stalled for many, many months, and I think they're just eager to get back on track. So one of the people we spoke to, who's the chief executive of Corey Holdings, Mr. Hoy, he said that the easing of the 10 accommodation rule was actually a huge benefit for him because now it means that 80% of his 200 workers can go back to work. And previously, under the rule, only about 30% could go back to work. So, I mean, this is a huge jump for him. And he also said that, now they have removed a layer of checks because previously you needed approval for workers, sites, and also you had to match specific workers to specific sites. But now you don't have to do the matching part anymore. You just need to have approval for the workers in the site. So that definitely saves a lot of time for him.
Right. Well, this is of course good news for these construction companies, but did they also suggest anything else that could help them during this difficult period? Perhaps easing of other restrictions, Wai Yee?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally they would love if all restrictions were lifted, but I think they do understand that, projects have to restart in a safe way. Otherwise, we really don't want the same situation to happen again where the dorm cases start all over again. But what happened is that right now there's still restrictions such as the transport has to be staggered for the workers, and even for major construction site projects to restart, they still need to apply for approval. So that's an entire process in itself. So there are definitely still some restrictions. And there was this economist I spoke to from Maybank, Kim Eng, and he said that he actually thinks that even with these relaxation rules, even though they do help a little bit, he thinks that the recovery of the sector will be rather slow because the conditions are still quite strict right now.
Right. Well, so on that note, you also spoke to the former president of the Singapore Contractors Association, Mr. Kenneth Lu. Is he confident that the construction sector will pick up and see better days moving forward?
Okay, I think he is very cautiously optimistic about it. What he said to us yesterday was that he said, every little bit helps because all the projects have been stalled for so long. So even though this is not obviously the ideal situation, the fact that especially for smaller projects, for example, lift maintenance or home renovation works, the fact that these workers can go back to work without needing to seek approval first from the BCA is a huge step forward, I think. So he is optimistic.
Well, thank you so much, Wai Yee, for that sharing and, of course, for coming onto the show. We were speaking to correspondent Yip Wai Yee. Now, you can read her story at straitstimes.com.
In other local news, parents hoping to clinch a spot for their children in 99 popular primary schools in Phase 2C of the Primary 1 registration exercise will have to face a ballot. Ballot results will be out on August 17th. Those whose applications are unsuccessful can register in Phase 2C supplementary for a place in a school with vacancies, and that starts on August 19th.
The Land Transport Authority has partially reversed some of its plans to make changes to key bus services in Bukit Panjang. This move follows unhappiness from residents and week-long discussions with stakeholders. It was revealed today that existing bus routes will be modified to allay the concerns brought up by the estate's residents, ending a tense standoff between commuters and regulators that saw 3 petitions with a total of more than 5,000 signatures.
The Monetary Authority of Singapore is injecting another $250 million to speed up technology innovation in the financial sector. The money will go towards large-scale projects and building a stronger pipeline of local fintech talent. The amount is 11% more than the original $225 million investment made 5 years ago.
Now, meanwhile, starting today, shoppers can visit 4 popular wet markets on any weekday, regardless of whether the last digit of their NRIC is an even or odd number.
The 4 locations are Geylang Serai Market, Chong Pang Market at Block 104 and 105 Yishun Ring Road, the market at Block 20 and 21 Marsiling Lane, and the one at Block 505 Jurong West Street 52. And that's good news for the stall holders as well, as multimedia journalist Renee Poe reports.
Shoppers can now visit 4 popular wet markets anytime on weekdays after entry restrictions were lifted today. Since 22nd April, they could only go on alternate days, depending on the last digit of their NRIC number. This was to reduce crowding to curb the spread of COVID-19. I'm here today at Chong Pang Market in Yishun to check out the situation. It's been raining this morning, but there's still a steady queue of people behind me. The crowd is still manageable and they are entering the market orderly using the safe entry system to check in. Shoppers welcomed the good news of the easing of the entry restrictions.
Because I drive all the way here from Woodland, so I think that it's very convenient. Sometimes when I'm driving, I need to plan in advance. Oh, tomorrow is odd day, then I can drive in.
It's a better. Now they can say and it can, no, the IC number is not a restriction.
Yeah, I feel relief. I don't have to say if something not in the kitchen, so I have to think to go out. Then today cannot go in. That's it.
Due to the wet weather, shop owners said footfall was still low, though business was better than the day before. Some reported up to a 50% loss in earnings during the past few months.
It's like quite empty still. Maybe it's just because this is the first day, so maybe it's unpredictable. So maybe tomorrow there will be a rise or it will remain the same. Because of this IC and this barrier, right, there's a lot of people that stop coming to the market. Yeah, and rather go to fair price.
Yeah, yesterday it be quiet. Today more busy bit after 9 o'clock.
今天还可以了，昨天大很下的也没有人，昨天没有人，今天还可以，因为比较小雨。
After entry restrictions kicked in, the 4 markets, which also include Geylang Serai Market, have seen weekday crowds reduced to the point where there are either no queues or very short ones. The rule will continue to apply on weekends. Some visitors were not aware of the NRIC restriction being lifted until they were told by a social distancing ambassador. A few ambassadors were also stationed inside the market to remind shoppers to keep a safe distance. Though shoppers welcome the news of the lifting of entry restrictions, they are still mindful not to linger and get only what they need. As for shop owners, they are hopeful that business will improve, but it remains too early to tell.
Now, across the causeway, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad unveiled the name of his new political party last night, calling it Parti Pejuang Tanah Air, or Fighters of the Nation Party. He made the announcement on Facebook and his blog in the form of a Malay poem.
And two of its lines raised eyebrows here in Singapore. The two lines translate to look at the Malays of the neighbouring country. Is their country still Malay?
Law and Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam commented on this in his own Facebook post, adding, quote, "Wonder which country Dr. Mahathir is referring to." Dr. Mahathir didn't state outright that he's referring to Singapore.
Let's discuss this further with Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teoh. Let's first talk about this poem that Dr. Mahathir wrote, Shannon. The two lines we highlighted earlier, look at the Malays of the neighbouring country, is their country still Malay, have raised eyebrows here. How have Malaysians, though, responded to the poem as a whole and maybe those specific two lines as well?
Well, firstly, there isn't really much reaction specifically to those two lines. I think Malaysians largely don't look at Singapore as a Malay country. Just as some might ask if Turkey or Indonesia is specifically Muslim countries, right? But not all Malaysians think that that's necessarily a bad thing, that Singapore has been robbed from the Malay community. I don't think that's the lens. It's just that just like you wouldn't view China as a Malay country, you don't view Singapore as a Malay country. It's multiracial. That's all there is to it. But the response from Malaysians has largely been about the point on fighting kleptocrats or corruption. Opinion on this is kind of mixed because, yes, Bersatu, Mahathir's original party, was formed to defeat UMNO over the 1MDB scandal. But many are pointing out now that Najib was handed a 12-year sentence not by the new government. Of course, it was done by the courts, but it happened under the new government. So still mission accomplished on that front. And some are questioning whether corruption was worse when Mahathir himself was in power. So that kind of conversation is happening. And it's really on that focus about corruption and kleptocracy. That's where Malaysians are focusing on that poem.
Right. Shannon, poem aside, Dr. Mahathir says Pejuang will not align with either of the two largest blocs in Parliament. It's an independent party, so to speak. In that case, do you see Pejuang having the same political clout as Dr. Mahathir's former party Bersatu?
Well, I think very clearly he's still part of the opposition, so he was not going to be aligned to Perikatan Nasional, the ruling coalition right now. But I think what he's saying is that he's not aligned to Pakatan Harapan in the sense that there's a perception that PH, the main opposition coalition, doesn't have Malay interests as a priority. He's trying to say that I will fight against the government with the rest of the opposition, but our ideology, our philosophy is going to be different. There is a kind of Malay-centricness to it. So will Pejuang be as strong as Bersatu? It is kind of formed in the same context where an opposition Malay-centered party going up against a government that we feel is corrupt or illegitimate, so on and so forth. Well, right now, I don't think there's going to be enough people deserting Bersatu to join Pejuang. We did see a few people defect from UMNO into Bersatu before the 2018 elections. I'm not sure those kind of numbers are going to be repeated. Now, for Pejuang to get there, well, maybe they do need to win first. But until this election, and we believe a snap election is going to be called anytime in the next few months, from now to then, there's a big question here about whether they can get their feet on the ground. Can they get enough candidates? It's going to be a rush job. So on the one hand, the context is quite similar to Bersatu. On the other hand, not all of it is in the same kind of circumstance.
Right. Well, building on that point, Shannon, how does Pejuang's mandate differ from the other Malay-centric parties like UMNO and Bersatu?
Well, of course, you have PAS, which is an Islamic party, so that's one kind of party. The rest are more Malay nationalist parties. Now, I don't think it's going to differ much. I think what Pejuang wants to be is pretty much a Bersatu version 2, who was set up basically to defeat an UMNO government. So now Pejuang is here to defeat what is a Bersatu and UMNO government, but still be a Malay-centric party. So Mahathir and his cohort are saying Bersatu's been hijacked, so we need a new Bersatu, as it were, a new national Malay party that has a leadership that is ostensibly clean, a leadership that has the Malay community, the interest of the Malay community as its foremost and not our own personal interests. So that's basically why they've done Pejuang. It's supposed to be a replacement for a replacement for UMNO. That's the situation that Mahathir finds himself in.
So if it's a Malay-centric position, will Pejuang, or like what you mentioned, Bersatu 2.0, prove popular with the people? How have Malaysians reacted to the news of this new party?
Well, now you've got several parties claiming to represent the Malay majority. We spoke about them, UMNO, Bersatu, Pejuang now. Of course, PAS is an Islamic party, but largely they also represent Malays. In the opposition, there's also Amanah. Some multiracial parties which also say that we also are Malay-led, like PKR. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of parties out there. The fact that Malays are a significant majority, it makes it very compelling to have a Malay-centric party or a completely Malay party like UMNO or PAS. Now, if you look at Malaysia's history, many parties have tried to be multiracial, but eventually somehow they always become more representative of non-Malays. We are looking at PKR, we're looking at DAP. They say multiracial, they have Malay members, they have Malay leaders, but somehow they become more attractive to non-Malays. So I think Malaysians are a mix of being curious about this new party, but some are possibly jaded and wondering, well, Mahathir started a new thing and started a new thing again. He's criticized past prime ministers before. When is this ever going to end? And why can't he just get on the Pakatan Harapan bandwagon? Why can't he join a party there? If he wants a Malay party, Amanah's already there. There are these questions that are being asked. But I think overall, people aren't really going to be paying very close attention to this until the election comes. Now, as we mentioned, it could be in the space of a few months, maybe even before the budget, which is scheduled for November. It could be slightly after that, maybe in the first quarter. Everyone I speak to in government are expecting it to happen pretty soon.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Shannon. Fantastic points made. That was Shannon Teoh, Malaysia Bureau Chief for the Straits Times.
Dylan Ang is standing by with the global headlines.
Thanks guys. Let's start with coronavirus updates. New Zealand officials reported 14 new COVID-19 cases today, taking the total number of active cases to 36 after being virus-free for more than 3 months. The new infections include one overseas arrival who was in quarantine. Officials are investigating the possibility that the virus had arrived in the country via freight, given one of the infected family members works in a cool store that takes imported frozen goods from overseas. Meanwhile, COVID-19 infections continue to rise in France and Spain. France saw a post-lockdown daily record, and Spain is once again in a critical situation, with an average number of daily cases higher than Britain, France, Germany and Italy combined. Passengers from mainland China will be able to transit through Hong Kong to other destinations from August 15th until October 15th. But transit in the other direction or inbound to mainland China remain banned. US Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and running mate Kamala Harris have attacked President Donald Trump as an incompetent leader who has left the US in tatters. The pair held their first campaign event together a day after Mr. Biden unveiled Ms. Harris as his number 2. Accusing President Trump of failing to lead during the coronavirus crisis, Mr. Biden said that he and Harris would fix the mess at home and abroad. As preparations for the November US election heats up, Facebook, Google and other major tech companies said that they were forming a coalition to promote discussions with government agencies to secure the election. The group, part of an effort to prevent online meddling and foreign interference that sullied the 2016 presidential election, planned to serve as a clearinghouse for data about disinformation campaigns. And finally, back in Asia, Thailand's King Maha Vajiralongkorn swore in a new cabinet yesterday but made no mention of recent anti-government student protests that have urged reforms of the powerful monarchy. The ceremony marked the king's first public appearance since protests called for the curbing of powers he has amassed since taking the throne after the death of his father in 2016. And those are the headlines around the world. It's back to you guys in the studio.
Well, thanks very much, Dylan. Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.